Hurst. My name is Lindsay Frank. I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement here at the university, and I'm joined by some of my colleagues in the advancement office. Welcome to the people who are joining in the back or here on Zoom. I'm joined by my colleagues Mitchell, Tony, Jen, Betsy, and Megan. And those are the folks that you'll hear from tonight, and the folks who are videoing and using our lovely spotlight here. So that will help us outside, because it's sure to get dark kind of quickly. So that's everything for introductions. One small rule as we go along, in order for us to all continue to be safe, it is a campus and university rule that all guests, all employees, students are required to wear their masks while indoors. You may remove them when we get outside, but anytime that we go back inside, if you will kindly keep those on, we appreciate that. You do not have to wear your masks if you're at home, but I guess if you're extra cautious, that's up to you. So that's it for housekeeping rules. If we didn't get you checked in as you arrived here in person, just touch base with us at the end so that we can make sure that we had you here on our list. So what we're going to do is the first tale tonight will be told right here, and then we're going to take a nice walking tour all around campus, and our final story will be given just behind all of you in Christ the King Chapel. So the very first story is really what I consider to be probably the most infamous story, the most popular story that Mercy Hurst has to offer when it comes to our hauntings. So the story is all about a ring, so a ring that you wear on your finger. And you're going to hear about this ring a couple other times throughout the tour tonight. So the first story goes back to the very beginning. Now, there was a young woman who was a student here at Mercy Hurst, and she met the love of her life. They fell in love, and he proposed marriage to her, gave her that beautiful diamond ring. She, of course, said yes. They were over the moon, so excited. Well, right after they became engaged, he actually left to go to the war. Now, while he was at the war, she was planning the wedding. She was so excited, you know, just head over heels, excited and in love. She received the horrible and tragic news that her beloved fiance was killed in the war. So here she was, so upset, devastated, of course. And she decided, because the love of her life had died, that the best alternative for her life was to give her life to the Lord. And she decided to join the Sisters of Mercy. So fast forward a little bit, you know, she went through all of the process of becoming a sister, and that her life was, you know, going well. Of course, she missed her fiance, but she had moved on, and suddenly on her door, she heard a knock, knock, knock. And can you, just like that, can you guess who it was? It was the dead fiance, although he wasn't dead. So here she was, so shocked. She could not believe her eyes. And she is now faced with the horrible dilemma. She became a Sister of Mercy, but her beloved fiance, the love of her life, wasn't dead. It actually kind of turned her into this emotional wreck. It really drove her to the point of insanity. So the story goes that she, the ring that he had given her, that she had kept, it was a special token of remembrance for him. She placed it on the baby Jesus statue of the Infant of Prague. The statue is actually located in the chapel. The whole ending of the story is that she was driven to insanity and she ended up dying. Now, it is said that after she placed the ring there and was driven to insanity, she it left a curse on the ring. So the ring has been spotted over the course of time. And the other day when we were down here in the chapel, we actually saw the ring. But it is said, and I am warning everyone here tonight, it is said anyone who touches the ring, now you can look at it, but anybody who touches it could be cursed. And we have heard horrible hauntings and horrible tales of the power of the ring. So at the very end the tour, we will end in the chapel and we can all see for ourselves if the ring is there tonight. But this is your warning. You should not touch it. So that's our first story for the evening. If you will all follow me outside now. We're gonna head right this way. So our guests on the call, we are headed outside. We are exiting Old Main. Yep, we are headed outside of Old Main. We're now right at the foot of the tower. You can see Old Main here in the background, and we're just headed over to the garden here just outside of the chapel for our next tale. You guys can all just gather around here. Wait a second. Just going to give it a minute until everyone can come outside. Forward if they'd like to gather around. Yeah, just so everyone can see. Feel free to come back here. Spread in here a little bit. Everyone kind of crowd in here, if you will. There might be ghosts in here, but you can come in. It's a little dark. You never know what you'll see. Yeah, everyone can move in closer. Feel free. Scoot in a little bit closer. Those in the back, move forward here. We're all friends here. Everyone in the back feel for? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So the next story we're going to tell actually has to do with the area we are in right now, which is called the Magnolia Garden. So before it was the Magnolia Garden, this whole area was actually filled with benches, picnic tables, and this is where all of the nuns would come and take their breaks, particularly their smoke breaks. So they were outside all the time smoking, and there was one particular nun who was out here very often, and she was very quiet. She always kept to herself, and she would sit in that far back corner where some of you are kind of close to right now, and she would smoke until she died in the 1940s. And after she passed away, the other nuns and people who would come out here and take their breaks and eat their lunch would sometimes see a woman sitting in the far corner, and she never said anything, but she would sometimes disappear at times and then she would reappear again. And it was said that that's actually the ghost of that nun who passed away. And to this day, even though Mercyhurst is now non-smoking, people have actually said that they've seen a woman smoking in that far corner, and they've also seen puffs of smoke that she's left behind as they walk by. And a true story, last year after this tour, a couple of us were walking back to our cars, and we actually smelled cigarette smoke walking by the Magnolia Garden and then quickly ran that way. So I don't know if any of you who are alumni have ever seen this woman in the far corner. I don't know if anyone's back there right now, but that smoking nun actually haunts this whole area to this day. So be careful walking home tonight after that. All right, so we're gonna actually head out this way. So I'm gonna cut through everyone. We're not going far, excuse me. We're actually just going right into the Taylor Little Theater. Pass you right back over here. We're just gonna give everyone a minute to come through here before we get started with this next story. Couple more people still. Come on in.
No.
Yeah, we have plenty of room. Everyone can pile in. I think we have about everybody inside, yeah.
Well, welcome everyone again. I'm Lindsay Frank. I'm a 1981 grad, and this building holds a lot of interest to me because I was a theater major here 40 some years ago. So the story I'm about to tell you, I first heard when I was a freshman in 1977. So some 40 years ago, this legend had it that there was a maintenance worker working right here on this wrought iron staircase that had come a bit loose. He was here by himself on the third shift, working alone, when he fell down from that stairwell to what was this picture right here is what it looked like back then. And there was a fountain down below. He was impaled on the fountain and he bled to death. Unfortunately, it was not found until the next day. Now, here's a picture for those on Zoom. So, in respect for his death, they turned off the fountain and said that it should never run again. Many, many years later, there was going to be an opening night in the Taylor Little. And they thought that perhaps this would be the time to turn the fountain back on for this wonderful gala. Many years had passed. Everyone kind of had forgotten about the maintenance worker. So they had maintenance come over to turn on this fountain. And when they did, the water ran red. So they just thought perhaps it was rust because it hadn't run for so very long. But it continued to run red and got deeper in color, very blood red. So they were very shocked by it and couldn't figure out why this kept running deep red water. They turned it off, and 2 days later, right up here was a dance studio. And there was a dance recital going on. Now these doors were not there, but there was a dancer. The focus force came into a trance, is what she recalled. She remembered nothing after that, but felt a force, and she fell from the very same spot that the maintenance worker had worked many, many years ago. And she fell onto the fountain. And that was just 2 days after they had shut it off, when they had reinstated the fountain. Now, she did not die. Luckily, her fate was a little bit better, but she did break her hip. She was never able to dance again, which was her lifelong dream. She ended up, unfortunately, leaving school, and this was so traumatic to her that she would never dance again, and that was her dream, that she ended up in Warren, Pennsylvania, in an insane asylum, with a broken heart, of course. It is said, and I have worked many shows in this building, that the maintenance worker can still be heard rushing the stage, hearing people have heard noises when no one else has been around. And a friend of Lindsay's, actually, several years ago, spotted a kind of orb-like figure, the figure of a dancer, right outside this building, spinning around, doing dancing, and we think perhaps it was a ghost or the spirit of the girl that fell on the fountain. So now we are going to head over to Eagan Hall, and I think Mitch is going to take it from there.
I'm going to sleep tonight.
Oh, you won't have to go. Get shoulder falling.
Heading across Old Main. What beautiful.
Moon, today is the full moon,
There was one last week.
but today is full moon and it's got a name to it. It's pretty cool.
Hunter's Moon.
Hunter's moon.
So if more folks could move this way and then probably a handful that way, that would be great. So everyone gets settled. Right. So hi everyone, like Lindsay said, my name is Mitchell. I'm a class of 2020 graduate. And this is probably one of my favorite haunted stories because I believe it to be 100% true. And we are standing in front of Eagan Hall, which formerly was an all-female residence hall here on campus. And now it's where a few of us have our offices actually on the second floor. But many years ago, Eagan Hall actually had a couple fires. And the fire that I'll speak about tonight happened on the 4th floor. And the reason I say this story is true is because if you go up to the 4th floor later tonight after the tour, you'll see some char or some burn marks on some doors up there. And this is a story I actually heard my freshman year, that each summer our maintenance staff will go up and paint over the burn marks. And every single year in the fall when students return, the black char marks return. So if you have time after the tour, feel free to check it out. But the story goes that when the fire took place in the early 1930s, maybe, that there were 2 roommates. And when the fire happened, the first roommate ran back up to the 4th floor to try to get her other roommate out. And unfortunately, she was unsuccessful. And her roommate passed away as the door was locked and she couldn't get it open. The roommate who did get out had awful scarring, awful burns, and had to be taken to one of the local hospitals. And when she got there after her treatment, she asked to look in a mirror and view her face. And immediately the nurse gave her the mirror. She saw her face in the mirror and she shrieked and the mirror broke. Now to this day, the mirrors in Eagan Hall don't quite look the same as the mirrors you might have at home. There's often some shattered or some different marks here and there. And it's even said to be that as you walk through and look at the windows of Eagan Hall, you might see a figure passing by. And I believe that it's her saying hello and making sure everybody is obeying Eagan Hall, as Eagan is one of the haunted spaces on campus. And now we're going to head over to the Grotto Commons, or Our Lady of Our Lord's Grotto. Perfect. All right.
This way.
So we're passing by Eagan Hall, and I'll tell a story to those on Zoom if Lindsay wants to share it to everybody in person. So this is Eagan Hall. On the 1st floor, we have our our dining facility. And then, like I said, we have other offices. So our alumni office, our career development center, our student conduct and residence life offices, as well as finance. They are all located up here. And the story that I was going to talk about was actually submitted by an alum who registered for, they can't see me, so they're just, but because I don't, they actually registered for the event and submitted this story. And I actually had never heard of this before, but she says she lived in a single room in Eagan Hall in the 1900s when it was still a residence hall. And she was getting ready for class as she typically would. And she was running down the hall to the bathroom. And when she came back ready for the day, a full set of clothes were laid out for her. And she actually decided that when she opened the door and saw that, she also heard this noise spread throughout the entire room. So she decided that it probably would be a good idea to change into the outfit that someone had mysteriously laid out to her. Now, when my colleague told me that story was submitted, a similar thing had actually happened to me when I lived in Ward Hall. It was rather different, but in some sense similar. So I think it's probably likely to be true, but not very sure. So this is Sullivan Hall, as well as Eagan Hall, where our Grotto Commons is. And we just passed Macaulay Hall, which is our all-male freshman residence hall. I don't know if some of our alum on the call virtually lived in Macaulay Hall, and want to chime in the chat, feel free to do so. We're now headed to the grotto, like I mentioned. Down here is a great outdoor space on campus, one of my favorites. And it's overlooking by the Student Union, which has the Roost, the Laker Inn, as well as a Student Union Great Room, where our Student Involvement Center is also housed. So we'll be telling this story in a moment. It gets rather dark here, but we will have some light for you soon once Megan gets into the picture.
We're just all going to wait a minute until all of our in-person guests are able to come down. It is a little spooky down here at night already before I even tell this story. All right. Yeah, you can all move in closer. You can come right up here. Yes, I would get as close as possible. All right. I think we have just about everybody here. All right, back here. Can everyone hear me? Feel free to move up to this side is all open too up here if anyone wants to move up here. All right, I'll speak loudly to make sure everyone can hear me. So I said it's a little spooky being down here at night, actually. So the story I'm going to tell is about the grotto where we are right now. And before it was the grotto, there was actually a big pond all around this area. And one night, one of the nuns was walking around the pond and she actually lost consciousness and fell in, and sadly she drowned in that pond. So a few years later, they were telling this story to the students. I guess they told it every year. It was a tragedy that happened on campus. And they said that these freshman girls didn't believe that it happened. They thought it was a hoax they made up to scare the girls. So a couple of this girl's friends decided to dare her to stare into the pond at night. So this girl stared directly into the pond, and she actually saw the face of a nun staring back at her. And then she felt a force behind her kind of push her in, and she fell face first into the pond. And luckily a friend was there to save her from drowning. So this girl ended up being completely fine. But shortly after that, they decided that they were going to drain this pond to make it this grotto. And when they drained the pond, they found the weirdest thing. There was a ton of animal bones found, and there's a bunch of rumors of how they got there, but no one really understood why. But what they never found was the body of the nun who drowned in that pond. So it's actually said that this nun can be found roaming around the grotto. She could be around right now, searching for her remains. And it's also said that if you look into a puddle when you're at the grotto at night, you might actually see her reflection staring back at you. So luckily there's no puddle. It's a dry night. It's a dry night, yeah. But I would be very careful of staying around the grotto at night, as you might see this nun still roaming the area.
Did anybody go to the insane asylum?
Not yet. All right, so we're actually going to move to our next location. I'm going to steal this. All right, and you can I'll run ahead here, but everyone can follow us up this way. So for all of our online viewers, you kind of are getting a view of the grotto right now. So we're gonna walk right through here. I know it's very dark right now, but for anyone online, you can see up there, the light is Grotto Commons, which is our dining hall on campus. You kind of get a little tour. The grotto is very beautiful. It's a little hard to see at night. It's a little creepy at night, but during the day, you'll see a lot of students hanging around here. And this whole building that I was standing by is actually our student union. So that's where you'll see campus involvement. There's actually the Roost there, which is a restaurant on campus. And there's also campus ministry in there and service learnings for all of our prospective students who are joining this call. For all of our alumni who are on this call, you probably recognize a lot of the places I'm pointing out right now. You can kind of hear in the background that there is a soccer game going on this evening as well. Always lots going on campus. And we're going to go right here into Trinity Green. And this is where you're all going to hear our next story. You can see the famous clock on campus. Many of our alumni will know what this is. And we're just going to give everyone else a minute to catch up before we move on to our next story. All right, we'll give everyone a minute. Everyone can move in again. We'll just give everyone a minute again to get here. All of our online viewers can then see a better view of Trinity Green. I think we almost have everybody. I think we're all here. Everyone's crowded. You can all move up. The story will be right up here so that you're able to hear. And I think Betsy is right up ahead. Yep. Our storyteller is just over here.
So right behind us here is Baldwin Hall, which was built in 1970. I also lived there. So this story has a little relevance to me as I heard this again as a freshman in 1977. I also lived on the floor of the student that I'm going to tell you about. Now, Lindsay had told us earlier when we started the tour about the famous ring. So this was a very skeptical girl when she had heard the story of the ring in the chapel. So one night, not telling her roommates, not telling anyone, she snuck into the chapel, saw the ring, and she took it off the baby Jesus statue. She thought, I am going to test this. And she put it on her finger, and nothing happened for a couple days. She took the ring off one night, still telling no one that she had it, and she put it on her dresser. Well, the next morning when she went to look at the ring, check out the ring, the dresser had warped a little bit where the ring was placed. And there was an indentation of the ring. She kind of wondered a little bit about it, but thought, oh my goodness, did I leave water there? Like, why is there just that little bit of warped wood on my dresser? The next day, she woke up to a green mist in her room, a bit of a fog. She, being the skeptic that she is, thought that perhaps it was the radiator and something was just coming out, the radiator, the heater. But this being a new building was kind of, maybe that wasn't so. The next day, the fog and the green tone got deeper. Her roommate said, what's going on in your room? Finally did tell them that she had the ring, other pieces of the furniture where she put it were getting warped. Now she knew that there was actual powers to this ring. She placed it back on the baby Jesus statue, and over the years, it has disappeared. It has reappeared. I guess we'll find out if we're going to see it tonight. So stay tuned. Now I think we're going to head over to Old Main. Okay. Thank you. Oops. You want to hold it? Okay, so we're going to head over to Old Main. We're walking through Trinity Green. We're going to go past Preston and into the back entrance of Old Main. So if anybody has any stories that they would like to share, please feel free to do it in the chat room, because generations of people have heard these stories. We're going to go by the Sister Damien Bell over here, which we ring when there is a victory on campus. And we're heading to the back of Old Main. Now you can see Eagan from this view, where a lot of strange things happen. And Lindsay, I think you can probably tell us a few things from when you were a student here.
You know, it was always very spooky when I lived there. So I was the last group of students to live there while it was still a residence hall. And it is now, of course, where our office space is. And I will say, there's just something about the building that makes it a little bit spooky.
Okay, we are going through the back entrance to Old Main. And we are going to go past the president's office. Lindsay, you want to share the story about the painting?
Sure. So there was a painting that was in the president's office, and it was a little Irish girl on the Irish countryside. And it is said that if you look into her eyes, she will put a curse on you for the rest of your life. Now, we felt that when President Victor retired, we should remove it from the president's office as a courtesy to our new president, President Getz, because we had become aware that this painting was in fact haunted. So it is now tucked away in storage, hopefully never to be seen again.
Wrapped in paper so no one can look at it.
Yes, exactly.
So as you can see, we are starting to ascend down to the chapel. And I guess we'll find out if the ring is there.
We will see very soon. We will hear from Mitchell now for our next story.
We'll get ready with our last story just as everyone gathers in.
Second to last.
Second to last. Mentally seven.
Everyone gather in. We'll have a story here in the foyer, and we'll have more stories inside of the chapel. So come on in close. You can hear Mitchell.
All right. So this is another good haunted Hurst story. Many of you just passed our admissions parlor over here on the right-hand side. This actually formerly used to be our president's office years ago. And before that, it was used as a viewing area for funerals. And many years ago, there was a viewing that took place of a young widow who unfortunately passed away. And during the viewing hours, everything went normal. Everything was conducted properly. And at the end, typically the employees would come and take the body to the cemetery to be buried. But because it is Erie, Pennsylvania, there was a huge winter storm and they were unable to do so with the conditions outside. So the Mother Superior at the time decided that they would just leave the body in the casket at night and come back tomorrow if the conditions allowed to bring it to the cemetery and finish the process. Well, the next morning when everyone returned, the doors to go outside of Old Main were blown open and there were footprints leading away from Old Main in the snow. And the cold air and the snow had went all the way into the room and you could see the footprints leading away. There was no body in the casket and nothing could be found. Obviously they were very frightened and they didn't know what to do. So the Mother Superior at the time decided that they would close those doors permanently so no one could get in or out, because after they had seen the footprints, months had gone by and they could see figures walking in the snow. There'd just be footprints and tracks randomly throughout campus that no one could kind of figure out where they had come from. And to this day, there's said to be moments where you'll look outside a window and you'll see a figure and you'll see some steps in the snow, but no one in person. And that's the story. We'll pass on this way. Oh, yeah.
We're gonna head on into the chapel, everyone. If you'd like to come up front and sit in the first few pews, we will conclude with a couple more stories. like to take a seat, you're welcome to. To those on Zoom, you're getting a view of the chapel mural here as we get everyone in person seated for our last few stories. All right, everyone, we are just down to our final few stories. Can everybody hear me okay here and online? All good? I'd love for the folks who are online, please use the chat function to type to us where you're joining in from. We'd love to see where everyone is coming from. I assume everybody here is from the Erie area because they're here with us tonight, but love to see how many people we have from out of town especially. Thank you so much for joining us. So our final few stories conclude here in the chapel. Now I want to be clear, I know there's at least 3 couples here tonight who are married here in the chapel. Raise your hands. 2, 3, very nice. Now you are not cursed, the chapel is not cursed, so you can live a long and happy marriage, so fear not. But the final couple stories conclude here in the chapel. So the first story that I want to share with you is that just over behind where the camera is and over to your left is the Queen's Chapel. And in a few minutes, for the folks on the computer and or on the iPad, and for all of you here in person, you can take a peek in there. That area called the Queen's Chapel was originally intended to be what is called a mortuary chapel. So there are actually 4 crypts in there. And the intention was that the O'Neill family, and so they were some of the school's earliest benefactors. The O'Neill family, Mr. and Mrs. O'Neill, paid for the chapel and the tower where we just were, so the big tower called the O'Neill Tower, to be added on to Old Main. So originally the building started just outside of the foyer and just went that way. So a couple years later, they paid for all of this portion to be added on, which we of course are so appreciative of because the chapel here is one of our most favorite spots on campus. So the O'Neill family, in the funding of this building, they had hoped that Mr. and Mrs. O'Neill and Mr. O'Neill's sisters, 2 sisters who are actually Sisters of Mercy, would be buried when they died in the Queen's Chapel. Well, they are not buried there. So Mr. and Mrs. O'Neill got caught up in what was the Teapot Dome scandal. So they actually fled the country and ended up dying, and they're buried in France. The sisters of Mr. O'Neill, the 2 Sisters of Mercy, are also not buried in there. They are buried in Titusville, which is where the Sisters of Mercy have a large plot for all of the sisters to be buried together. So it is said that on a cool fall night, kind of like tonight, you may see the spirits of the O'Neill family roaming around the area. So that is your warnings as you walk to your vehicles tonight, that their spirits often roam this area because it was in their heart that they'd be buried here in the Queen's Chapel. So their spirits roam the area looking for their intended resting place. So that's your first story for here in the chapel. And now I know that you're all dying, maybe not dying, that's probably a bad choice of word, excited to hear the final tale of the ring. Now, just to your left, and for the folks on the iPad, we will give you a close-up view in just a moment, is the infamous statue, the Infant of Prague, baby Jesus statue, where the ring was placed many years ago. And I want to warn you again, I know that we've already talked about this. I really want to stress that you should not touch the ring. Many crazy things have happened. And one of the craziest things that happened years after the woman placed the ring on the statue is that there was a student here at Mercy Hurst, and she had a boyfriend, and she thought that she would play a joke on him. So she took the ring, she placed it on her finger, and one night at dinner with the boyfriend and all of her friends, she said, "Look, everyone, we're engaged." And she showed everybody the ring. It was a big joke because, haha, they weren't actually engaged. And the boyfriend was probably sweating a little bit, maybe feeling the pressure that she was implying they should get engaged soon. Well, that sadly did not happen because it had definitely laid its curse on this young couple.
The next day, the boyfriend was tragically killed in a horrible accident just on State Street. So in just a moment, we will have an opportunity to head in and check to see if the ring is there. You're welcome to pop into the Queen's Chapel as well. Check out the crypt area. You've all been plenty warned of what to or not to touch. So please be careful. But I want to say thank you to all of you for being here. Now, these tales here at Mercy Hurst, are they true? Are they made up? And the story goes, no one really knows. So they've been passed down by generation to generation, and we enjoy very much sharing them with all of you. So to our prospective students here, we'd love to see you here in the fall, and we promise, as you can see, our alumni keep coming back. So it's not as spooky as you might think. But thank you all for being here. I'm going to take the folks on Zoom in here so they can get an up close look, and then you can all come on in and see for yourself if the ring is there. All right, Zoom friends, come on in. Oh my gosh, and it is here tonight. Now, I'm not going to touch it. Don't you dare touch it. It is there right on the baby Jesus statue. You can see up close. Again, looking at it will not give you the curse. You just don't want to touch it. Don't you dare. All right, I will grab that from you. Our folks here in person can come on in. Here on Zoom, I'll take you into the Queen's Chapel as well. And this is the area that the family was meant to be buried in here. Of course, their bodies are not here in the chapel though. All right, everyone, thank you so much for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. I hope you had a wonderful time, and we hope to see you again soon, maybe on campus for our next event. Have a great night and happy Halloween.